The headline screamed, "Pasig River declared biologically dead." It was a phrase that echoed through every home, every street, and every heart in Manila. The news was impossible to ignore, splashed across newspapers and blaring from television sets. It was as if the city itself had received a death sentence. Our river, Manila's lifeblood for centuries, was gone, now a toxic black scar slicing through the city's heart. Once a source of pride and sustenance, the Pasig had become a symbol of everything we had lost. The water, once shimmering and alive, now looked like a wound that refused to heal. News reports showed a river choked with plastic, bubbling with methane, its water pitch black. The surface was a floating graveyard of bottles, bags, and forgotten things, all swirling in a toxic dance. The river's breath was heavy with the stench of decay, a warning to anyone who dared come close. It was a national tragedy, not just a news story. The Pasig's death was felt in every corner of the Philippines, a collective wound that cut across generations and backgrounds. People gathered in silence, watching the news unfold, unable to look away from the disaster that had struck at the core of their identity. Faces on TV showed shock, shame, and deep sadness. Some wept openly, others stared in disbelief, as if hoping the news would somehow change. The grief was palpable, a heavy silence settling over living rooms and public spaces alike. How did we let this happen? The Pasig was once a place of beauty and life. Children played along its banks, families picnicked under the shade of trees, and fishermen cast their nets into clear, flowing water. The river was woven into the fabric of daily life, a backdrop to countless memories and milestones. Now, it symbolized our neglect and failure. The riverbanks, once bustling with activity, stood empty and abandoned. The laughter and music that once filled the air had been replaced by silence and the hum of pollution. The air reeked of rot and chemicals, a constant reminder of decay. Even the wind seemed to carry the story of what we had lost, whispering warnings to those who passed by. The river's suffering was impossible to ignore, a daily testament to the consequences of our actions. The river, once a connector, now divided communities. Where bridges and boats once brought people together, the polluted waters now kept them apart. Neighbors became strangers, separated by a barrier of filth and regret. Children were warned away, fishermen abandoned their nets, and life vanished. The river, that once fed and nurtured the city, now threatened it, driving people away from its banks. The loss was not just environmental, it was deeply personal. This was the scene in January 2026, as we remembered the river's darkest days. The skyline stood in silent witness, the city's pulse slowed to a crawl. The Pasig story seemed to have reached its tragic end. The 1990s declaration of its death was a crisis that forced us to face ourselves. It was a wake-up call, a moment when denial was no longer possible. The river's fate became a mirror, reflecting our choices and our failures. We had hit rock bottom. A part of Manila's spirit died with the river. The city mourned not just the loss of water, but the loss of hope, connection, and pride. It was a grief that lingered, shaping the city's identity for years to come. But in that darkness, a spark of hope was ignited. Even as despair threatened to overwhelm us, small signs of resilience began to appear. A single plant pushing through the polluted soil, a sunrise casting golden light on the black water, reminders that life, though fragile, could still endure. The story of the Pasig River wasn't over. Its journey was far from finished, and its fate was not yet sealed. The river's past was filled with pain, but its future still held the promise of renewal. Its most important chapter, the story of its comeback, was just beginning. People from all walks of life began to gather, determined to heal what had been broken. The river's revival became a shared mission, a cause that united the city in hope. The tragedy became the catalyst for a revolution of the heart. Strangers became allies, working side by side to restore the river. The Pasig's suffering awakened a new sense of responsibility and love for the city's natural treasures. We realized the river's fate was tied to our own. Its health reflected our values, our choices, and our willingness to change. Saving the Pasig became a symbol of saving ourselves. The city's heart had stopped, but it could beat again. The Pasig's revival was not just about water, it was about hope, unity, and the power of collective action. This is the story of how we brought it back. It is a story of loss, awakening, and the relentless human spirit. A story that continues to inspire Manila and the world. The death of the Pasig River was not just an environmental tragedy, it was a profound human crisis that touched every aspect of life along its banks. For generations, the river had been a source of hope, sustenance, and community. Its decline marked the unraveling of a way of life. Thousands of families, many with nowhere else to go, built fragile shanties along the river's edge. Every day, they faced the harsh reality of living beside toxic, polluted water, with no escape from the dangers it brought. Children, innocent and unaware, played on heaps of garbage, their laughter mingling with the ever-present threat of disease. Sickness was a constant companion. Skin rashes, diarrhea, cholera, and typhoid became part of daily life, robbing many of their childhoods. When the rains came, floods swept through their homes, bringing with them filth and disease. Families waded through contaminated water, desperately trying to protect what little they had. The river, once a giver of life, now became a silent killer. Toxic water choked out fish and plants, leaving behind only death and decay. As the river died, poverty deepened. Families found themselves trapped in a cycle of despair, unable to break free from the grip of pollution and hardship. The cultural loss was devastating. Fishermen's boats, once symbols of livelihood and tradition, rotted unused. River festivals, once vibrant celebrations, vanished, leaving only memories. Songs that once celebrated bounty and abundance became mournful laments, echoing the sorrow of a community in mourning. An entire way of life was erased by pollution. Shops closed, families moved away, and the riverbank became a shadow of its former self. The river's death tore apart close-knit communities, deepening poverty and leaving families isolated and struggling to survive. Riverbanks that were once places of pride and gathering became dangerous, desolate, and neglected, avoided by all but the most desperate. People living near the Pasig were stigmatized, unfairly seen as living by the city's sewer, carrying the burden of shame and exclusion. The true cost of pollution was measured not just in statistics, but in lost lives, broken dreams, and wounded spirits, pain that lingers for generations. The river of tears reflected our own brokenness, a mirror of the suffering endured by those who called the Pasig home. Saving the river meant saving ourselves, restoring hope, dignity, and the promise of a better future for all who live along its banks. The Pasig River's death was no mystery, just unchecked growth and neglect. Manila's population exploded, but sanitation didn't keep up. Most homes near the river had no sewage system. Waste went straight into the water. Factories dumped toxic chemicals and untreated waste daily. Environmental laws were weak and rarely enforced. Fines were cheaper than proper waste treatment. Plastic and garbage clogged the river, turning it into a moving landfill. Floods worsened, sunlight and oxygen couldn't reach the water. The river suffocated under our waste. Political neglect and public indifference sealed its fate. We all shared the blame, government, industry, and society. We killed our river together. In the 1990s, scientists delivered the final verdict. The Pasig River was biologically dead. Oxygen levels were so low, nothing could survive. Fish, plants, and even microorganisms vanished. The river became an anaerobic wasteland, home only to bacteria. Tests showed sky-high pollutants and dangerous levels of coliform bacteria. Heavy metals like mercury and lead poisoned the water. The river was a chemical cocktail of death. Scientists explained, massive waste used up all the oxygen, suffocating life. The water turned into a dark, impenetrable soup. The declaration moved the problem from opinion to undeniable fact. The biologically dead label became a rallying cry. The nation was shocked and shamed into action. This was the wake-up call we couldn't ignore. The river's death sparked a wave of public outrage that swept across Manila. People from all walks of life, young and old, rich and poor, were united in their anger and heartbreak. The once vibrant Pasig River, now choked with pollution and lifeless, became a rallying point for a city in pain. The image of a dead river in Manila became a symbol of national shame, broadcast on television screens and splashed across newspaper headlines. It was a stark reminder of what had been lost, and what was at stake if nothing changed. People demanded answers and action. Students took to the streets, their voices echoing through the city. Artists mourned the river's demise, channeling their grief into powerful murals and performances that captured the public's imagination. Church leaders called it a moral sin, urging their congregations to care for creation and reminding everyone that stewardship of the earth was a sacred duty. Business groups realized a dead river hurt the economy, threatening jobs, tourism, and the city's future. They began to speak out, joining calls for urgent intervention. The media kept the story alive, showing the suffering of riverside communities. Heartbreaking interviews with families who depended on the river for their livelihoods brought the crisis into every home. Pressure on the government mounted. Officials faced tough questions from journalists and citizens alike, unable to escape the growing demand for accountability. Ordinary citizens found their voice, organizing cleanups, forming neighborhood groups, and inspiring others to join the movement. Refusing to wait for someone else to act, they rolled up their sleeves and got to work. Grassroots efforts inspired hope, showing that change was possible when people came together. The Pasig River became a major political issue, dominating debates and campaign promises. Saving the river was no longer just an environmental concern, it was a test of leadership. Politicians could no longer ignore it. The voices of the people were too loud, the evidence too clear, and the consequences too dire. The people's message was clear: enough is enough. They demanded real solutions, not empty promises. The government was forced to respond, launching new initiatives and pledging resources to restore the river. The era of neglect ended. Rehabilitation began. For the first time in decades, hope returned to the banks of the Pasig. The river's fate was now in the hands of a united public, determined to reclaim their city's lifeblood and write a new chapter for generations to come. In 1999, the government created the Pasig River Rehabilitation Commission, PRRC. For the first time, one agency coordinated all efforts to save the river. But government alone wasn't enough. Civil society and the private sector joined in. The ABS-CBN Foundation launched Kapit Bisig para sa Ilog Pasig, cleaning one estero at a time. Communities were empowered to care for their waterways. Companies, universities, and NGOs joined, providing funding, research, and education. Massive campaigns taught people not to throw trash into canals. The Bayanihan spirit, community teamwork, came alive. Relocating riverside families was done with compassion, giving them better homes and opportunities. Saving the river meant uplifting the people too. The movement revived both environment and community. Reviving the Pasig River was a marathon. The first victories came in the esteros. Garbage cleared, water flowing, murals brightening the banks. Children played in new pocket parks. Solid waste management improved. Recycling and composting took root. Residents became guardians of their communities, keeping esteros clean. Factories were inspected and forced to treat their waste. The law was finally enforced. These successes inspired more people to join. Hopelessness turned to pride. Each clean canal brought us closer to a living river. Years of hard work paid off. Life returned to the Pasig River. Scientists saw oxygen levels rise. Fish and birds came back. Cleaned riverbanks became green parks for families. The Pasig River ferry service was revived, reconnecting the city. Riding the ferry became a joyful experience, with green views and fresh air. Community health improved, disease rates dropped, children thrived. The river, once a source of despair, became a source of pride. The air smelled cleaner, the water looked clearer. These changes improved daily life for thousands. The river was giving life back to Manila. The city rediscovered its heart. The Pasig was alive again. Today, the Pasig River is a living testament to what we can achieve together. It's not yet pristine, but it's a river of hope. Its journey from tragedy to comeback is a story for future generations. The Pasig is now a symbol of resilience, not shame. The real heroes are ordinary people, students, volunteers, mothers, community leaders. Change happened when we joined hands, not pointed fingers. The spirit of Bayanihan is our greatest lesson. The work isn't finished, we must stay vigilant. The river's revival must be a permanent commitment. If we can bring a dead river back to life, what else can we achieve? Let the Pasig be our legacy, a river that connects and inspires us. The river is alive, and so are we.